Welcome to What Are You Even Talking About? Podcast where we talk a little bit about everything, especially mental health, personal wellness, and life. Today's guest is Elaine Lindsay. She is a multifaceted individual who has dedicated her life to various pursuits, including mental health advocacy, digital integration, and personal transformation. She is the host of the Suicide Zen Forgiveness podcast, where she shares her own experiences and those of others to break the silence and stigma surrounding suicide, mental health, and loss, drawing from her own personal journey of resilience and healing after the suicide of her close friend at age 16 and her own near death experiences. As a digital specialist, Elaine has over 3 decades of experience in SEO, social media optimization, and website integration, helping entrepreneurs and small businesses navigate the digital landscape. She is also a speaker, author, and part time stand up comedian known for her eternal optimism and unique sense of humor. Elaine works Elaine's work has been recognized, including her inclusion in the top 100 thought leaders in mental health by Thinkers 360, and she has been featured in various media outlets such as CTV, CBC, and numerous podcasts worldwide. Elaine, thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be here, Mark.
Okay, so we like to do this thing on the podcast where the prior guest before you got to ask you a question.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah. So we do it as a surprise at the beginning of every episode. So, each guest gets to ask a question by the end of it. And your question is, what are you doing to put yourself out there?
Probably quicker to answer, what am I not doing? I am, well, let's just put it this way. I'm on a journey to say hello to everyone on the planet. So, with that in mind, I drive people crazy because I say hi to people that I see on the street, on vacation, doesn't matter where I am. Doesn't matter if you have earbuds in, I will make signs so you can see that I'm saying hi. Uh, Social media was for me, the minute it came out, an incredible bonus. It meant I could reach the whole wide world. And very quickly, after Facebook opened to real people, not just college students, I went on so that I could basically stalk my adult children because I was driving them nuts, checking on them. They didn't live in my city. Within a month, I had more friends than both my kids, and one of my kids is in radio.
Wow.
But how do you do that? Well, because I am so curious. I love to learn about people's stories. And so for me, getting out there on social media, making sure that whatever message I have at that time, I put it out as far as I can. And that sometimes means TV, radio, podcasts, other shows, wherever I can get the word out. I am really committed to ending the stigma, the silence, and the shame surrounding suicide, loss, ideation, and mental health. And the only way to do that is to say it loud. So that's what I do.
That's amazing. And I know suicide is a very big problem nowadays. It's taking so many lives per day. And, it seems like every year it gets a little worse. And, people don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
And or they like to say like they did that they were cowardly for doing that and stuff like that. And it's like that's not the way people should handle it at all. No one should be made to feel like they were a coward because they felt something so much and they couldn't get the help they needed that they felt that was the only option they had.
You are so right on all those counts. And the fact is that, you know, suicide is a horrifically final solution to what amounts often to a temporary problem. But the fact is, when you are in it, when you are feeling totally alone, when you feel like you don't matter, when you feel like the world is better off without you, it's really hard to turn that around. our brains tend to go to the negative. It's how we're programmed. And it can be really hard to get out of that. What I ask people to do always is, once a month, I just want you to give one stranger up to 10 minutes. That's all I ask. And I don't want you to fix their problems. I don't want you to offer solutions. I just want you to offer them to actively listen. Just listen. People want to be seen and heard. If we just take the time, once a month, one person, 10 minutes, we can really make a difference in this world. And to that end, I'm going to get really, really serious here and tell you that, in fact, the numbers are horrific. This year, we were told it would be about 800,000 people die by suicide. What I want you to know is that's based on the numbers people have. There is still such stigma and silence and shame. There's a lot that aren't reported, particularly in younger people. So the stats aren't exactly right. But here's the frightening thing. About a week and a half ago, I had responded to a post on LinkedIn about suicide loss and other people that work in the space. And I went to check the stats because I'd been checking them for a little while, and it was starting to be not just close, but over the 800. So when I checked the stats, it was at 970,000, I think 400 and something. And I thought, oh my God, like that's crazy. That's so far over the estimation. This is terrifying. So I got out ChatGPT because I do use AI for a lot of things. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I putz around with all kinds of things, and I'm an early adopter. So I went in and I waited 15 minutes and I plugged in the numbers from 15 minutes and 15 minutes later and got ChatGPT to approximate how long would it take for us to reach 1 million. And I was so gobsmacked. 9 days, 210 hours. I just, like, I can't even say it now. We are at a place where we're losing 1 million people in a year. Like, we have to do something. We have to normalize the conversation. We have to stop not talking, because people really believe that if you talk to a suicidal person and you mention suicide, you're going to make it worse, when in fact you're not. And it's about asking people, how are you really? Like, I'm here, I want to listen to you. How are you? What do you need? And for most people, it's just to be able to tell their story, tell what's going on with them. And they're not asking for solutions. They're not asking for someone who is ready for a solution and is asking for help. We have everything starting with 988. You have the Trevor Project. You have the Samaritans in America and the UK. I have a list of places you can get help on our website, on the podcast website. I have another friend who has a huge list, a health hub on her site, Lisa Sugarman. She's in the States as well. All of these things, if we all who work in this space link hands and make a point of encouraging people to talk about it, then we're going to change how things are. Because what people don't realize is I started having suicidal ideation before I was 5 years old. Okay, on the table always. I say if I burnt my toast or God forbid got a B on a test, one of those options was always, well, I could just exit. But when I got to 16 and my friend Andrea took her life, all of a sudden I was faced with the actual truth of what was constantly going through my head. And it threw me into a whole other land. I just basically left this body and reverted to being about 12 years old. I just could not deal. I didn't want to feel these feelings. I didn't want to know this. And I can say honestly, the saving grace for me was I saw the movie Pollyanna when I was 5, and she played the glad game. It was always something to be glad about. And it was weird because the suicidal ideation is half of me and Pollyanna's the other half. And they war all the time. But, up until now, it's been going for a while. I'm 69 years old. Pollyanna has mostly won. I'm not happy to say there have been a few instances where I did try to exit. But I am grateful that I am still here. And in a way, Andrea gave me the worst, best gift you could ever give someone. And that was being someone left behind so that I knew what it would feel like if I did that to my family, if I left. And it has made a world of difference because I have lived through some pretty horrific things. And, for instance, 4 years after Andrea died, I was crushed between 3 cars on a highway in front of her grave. I lost part of my leg. I was almost 7 months pregnant and they took the baby. I had multiple broken bones everywhere. I fractured my skull. I was in the hospital for a very long time. And over the next 5 years, I had to have skin grafts and I have no kneecaps. I have no cartilage. I have a giant hole in my left leg. And over the years, I have had to have replacements. So I'm bionic, which is kind of cool. I have a titanium rod in my arm. I have a titanium half joint on my bad leg. I have more titanium and nails and screws in my shoulder.
Wow.
But Pollyanna looks at it as kind of cool. I'm bionic.
You're almost like the $6 million man at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
I know that I myself have had suicidal ideation many times in my life. And I think the one thing I really wanted most was somebody to listen because, telling your story lets you say it from your perspective. It's not anybody's judgment towards you. It's not
Mhm.
anybody else looking at you. It's you telling your story, the things that you feel like you went through and the things that caused you pain. And a lot of people want to fix it so bad or don't know how to deal with emotion that they become standoffish or they say hurtful things. And it doesn't help. Support needs to be there. And I feel like, that's what something I preach a lot too is personalized support, being there for the person with what they need, what they tell you they need, and not what you think they need. Because a lot of people, especially in my case, I was going through a psychosis and everybody was like, well, we're going to send him to the hospital. We're just going to keep calling the sheriffs to come pick him up and take him to the hospital. And there were days where I wasn't suicidal or doing anything. I was just
Mhm.
minding my own business. And here comes the sheriffs. And they'd be like, we have to take you to the hospital. And I was like, nothing's wrong. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, what are you talking about? And then they would have to put me in handcuffs, put me in the
Oh my
squad
God.
car, and take me to the hospital. And literally, I would have to talk to the doctors and be like, "I'm fine." And the people that said that haven't seen me in weeks. And, so it's really an interesting situation that anybody can basically say anything to the cops to have you committed without any type of evidence, and they don't listen to the person that they're taking. So, doing that is traumatizing, and that doesn't really help the situation at all. Like, it kinda makes it worse in those type of situations when all someone had to do was sit there and listen.
And this is exactly why you and I do this, because a lot of what people do, they want to be helpful, but they are stuck in fear. And fear makes you react in the only way that people know how. And often that is try and remove the person from the situation. But the fact is, if we just normalize the conversation, if we just talked about it, we just understood a little more what people are going through, you take the time to listen, then you have a better understanding. And then you could say, Mark, like, where are you today? Where are you in your psychosis today? Are you okay to continue where we are at? Or do you need something else? That's the type of um, comment or question that will allow you to respond and not feel judged or put upon or pushed or what have you. Giving someone an opening to say, no, I'm okay today, but knowing that those people care for you, that can be a sense of comfort. And rather than them being stuck in fear because they don't know any better, if we get people to understand, if we start talking to children in a language that they understand about their feelings, about your thoughts. Nobody tells us how to work our brain. Okay? Nobody
At all.
tells us, you know, feelings are neither good nor bad. They just are. They're all different. And we are meant to feel. Okay? I tried to go through life feeling nothing. I didn't want to feel anything. Okay? I gobbled drugs and drink and whatever to make sure I couldn't feel because it was so terrifying. And I didn't know any better. I didn't even know like the term ideation. I didn't know any of that. I was in my little la world because I didn't know what else to do. And when you're wrapped up in pain and when you're wrapped up in addictions, that doesn't help. But if we take the time to really listen to someone, you'll find that you have more in common with other people than not. And everybody, it doesn't matter whether they have a labeled disease or they have psychosis or they have whatever. At some point, everybody has fears, everybody has doubts, everybody goes through something. And rather than judging, just allowing them to share, not comparing and not looking at, putting your perspective in it. That's not required. It's just about listening. Is this what you need? And by listening, truly listening, sometimes that's all people want. They just want you to hear them. They want someone to say, I see you, I hear you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. That was mostly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Because telling your story, from your own perspective is really like you can people don't understand what all you're going through. And, we all go through a lot. And so our
Mhm.
stories are so different. And just listening to it to make you be like, wow, like you're more likely to empathize because you've heard their story from them and not, from somebody else or a doctor or a police officer, if that happens,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it brings a lot of stigma to it because, what we see in the media over and over again when it comes to, mental health
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially suicidal ideation. They've built it up to where, people think of it a certain way. And, that's the fault of, all the people who make TV shows and movies and,
Yeah.
newspapers and all the media that, they've really it's like almost indoctrinated it into us at this point that, we need to shy away from. We don't need to talk about it. And that in no way should be what it should be. Because I mean, that's a huge number. We're 1,000,000
Yeah.
is a lot of people, and I don't think any of us can really think about the scope of that. Like,
Yeah.
it's so large that, we can't really deal with that, and it's something that should not be the case at all, and, it's a lot of soldiers coming back, and they have they're
Yeah.
a big number for it. Men in general have a high rate of
Yeah.
suicide, and, men especially, they're taught to, don't show your feelings. Crying's for boys or for women, and, don't be a little girl, and, man up,
Yeah.
and these are all terms that they tell men, and it's like, I have feelings too,
Yeah.
and if I'm not allowed to express them or shown how to express them, then I later on, it's one of those things that, pushes the suicidal ideation because you think you have nowhere to turn to or you have no one to talk to. And, talking to a therapist is only for crazy people and all the things that they tell us that, we shouldn't listen to at all because we all know what pain is. Like, we all know what trauma is. Like, I think the numbers for trauma is like, in America at least, is 90% of people
Yeah.
are, criterion A for, some type of
Yeah.
devastating traumatic experience.
But here's the thing. I'm going to stop you there for a second because this is something that people don't often think about. So, or someone who's never had a big trauma, they've never had a car accident, they've never had a psychotic break, they've never had, the death of a loved one, none of that. They're in their little bubble. And the worst thing that's ever happened to this person is they stubbed their toe and they lost the nail on their toe. Let's say that. Okay. So that's the worst thing that ever happened. In their life, in their perspective, that is the most extreme pain you can feel because that's what they felt and they don't know anymore. And because humans are comparative, people would just go, oh, yeah, never mind, no big deal. Well, yeah, it is a big deal to that person. And we lose sight of the fact that we can only look at things from our perspective. So each of our perspectives is different, and that's fine. But we can't quantify or measure or compare somebody's stubbed toe to somebody else's loss of a child or, whatever it is. We just can't do that because in their life, that is their trauma. It's the only, and God bless them, okay? God bless you if that is all you have ever suffered. And even in that statement, okay, and this is why I'm saying it, in that statement, I am minimizing their pain because I'm thinking of it from my perspective. And we can't help that. That's who we are as humans. We are always going to measure against our own perspective. But when you are aware of that, when you can acknowledge and have empathy for someone else who maybe hasn't gone through what you've gone through, who maybe doesn't understand super pain or loss, then having empathy for that person where they are makes things a lot easier. And it makes life easier to get along with people when you're not constantly measuring what they do against what you do or what someone else does. One of the worst things I used to find when I was young, I worked at a mental institution. I volunteered from the time I was 12. And when I was 15, the provincial, like state government, gave a special dispensation so I could work there for the summer. And it was a big deal because back then you couldn't get a job in anywhere, like not even like a McDonald's, not that McDonald's was around yet, but yeah, I'm that old. But you couldn't even get a job until you were 16 and had a social insurance number. So this was a big deal. And I went to work there. And in all honesty, a 15-year-old should not have seen some of the things I saw. There was the use of electrotherapy, there was electroshock, there was lots of different things that they don't necessarily use as much anymore, or certainly not in the same way. And a week into the summer that I was there, the first summer I was there, a young boy that I used to take the bus with to school, he actually lived in a group home for what was called back then wayward boys. It actually said it on the building. He had a stepfather who, I guess, beat his mom and him and his siblings, and he kept running away. So they put him in this group home. And we would take the bus together because we both went to schools that were pretty far away. And we spoke, for, I guess, 2 years before I went to work there. And that first week, about day 4, I was going through one of the wards. I was going to look for 2 of my charges because I taught swimming classes. And as I went through the yard, I suddenly saw Michelle. Like, oh my God. Like, when I said, you didn't tell me you were getting a job here. How come they let you too? I had to go through. He said, a job? What are you talking about? I live here now. And I had volunteered, as I said, since I was 12. And something in me knew, one, this was wrong. This was so, so wrong. You don't just discard people because, no one checked into why he ran away. They didn't do that back then. By the end of the summer, he wasn't the person I knew anymore. Because as humans, we tend to go to the lowest common denominator. If you are in a group and everybody is quiet all the time, you will become quieter. If you're in a group and people try to excel, then most times people will. If the general aura of the group is a bit less than, or, they don't try as hard or what have you, then after a while, you too will lower your vibration, if you will, to fit in with that group. And I could not have articulated it at 15 years of age. But on looking back, deep down inside, I was terrified for him. And I was terrified for the rest of us that this could happen. And so the next year, when Andrea died, I kept everything to myself because I knew if I told anybody any of the thoughts that went through my head, I'd end up in that institution. And it's a sad look back on how things were. But I'll tell you how bad it was. coming to take you away, ha ha, hee hee, ho ho, to the funny farm, where life is beautiful all the time. You can look at music. There's no instruments, nothing. It's all done, I guess, forerunner to such a stamp on what I felt that, oh my God, I don't dare say a word. So just think how many, what was really going on in people's heads. No one talked about the fact that you could get help. No one talked about, okay, that just doesn't happen. And it was such a different time when it was a crime. And I felt I had to protect her, even in death, from what people would think. They, there are still countries that consider it illegal. It is a crime. It's still on the books in Virginia.
That is not surprising at all. The South in general is like that. I know because I live in North Carolina, and
Yep.
they consider it. That's the one thing you can't do, and it's like that doesn't. If God's a God, want to help them with that instead of condemning them. It
That's such a good point. And I think of the man asked God, "Why did you forsake me, Lord?" And God said, "What do you mean? Like you, you were stuck here. Did you not see the fire people I sent? All of those times, things were sent to do nothing. You have to be participatory in your assistance, if you will." I know it's not so, but I would think as religious people would get that. If God made us in his like lazy, I don't think God would just sit there and do nothing. I think if, things are coming around you that are helpful, I part of, as you said, part-time comedian, part of getting through life in tough times, nothing that is not laughable. Okay, absolutely nothing. And to this, he'll be 92 in January. He has dementia, and he only got it when he was 90, and we are so grateful for that. Calls me every morning, and he'll say, "Well, just thought I'd let you know I'm still green side up." A coping mechanism for many, many people. And it can break the tension when things are, or your kids are driving you crazy. Humor can sometimes be the bridge that allows people.
like
Oh, yeah.
it can be a game changer, like out of nowhere.
Yes.
Like I know when my daughter, like And I'm like, "She's so mad and she's so little." Like, and I'll just die laughing, which makes her even madder, which makes me laugh even harder, and I'm just like, you know, it's very but to her, that's the biggest problem she's ever had.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's once again, you can't think of it like I smile at myself, I was like, "I remember when I was like that." And that, they my kids are the reason why I'm still here. And and I was a really sad, depressed, angry child. And, I had a lot of would be here by the time I was 21. So when I made it to 21, I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna make it to 30." It was like I was hell bent. It didn't happen at 21, it'll happen at 30.
Yeah.
Then 30 got here and I was like, "Huh." And then in the last psychosis I had years ago, and I just knew I had done it. Like, but it was by the grace of the universe, of God, what and when I checked, there was no wound, and I didn't understand how there was no wound more than anything, and I was like, "I should be dead." And then I was like, "I want no one else to feel I don't want anyone else to feel like this anymore. I'm gonna do my best to make sure that doesn't happen." Because when you're at that place, other people and,
Yes.
you can't isolate that. You can't isolate a person who's hurting because once you isolate them, it gets worse. And you would just it's so hard to like believe that people don't see that.
I mean, a lot of people are aware, but people don't know what to do with the fact that right now, the the discord and all of that, it's loneliness. It's an epidemic. And loneliness doesn't mean your brain is telling you you are alone. You have to be solo. You can be sides that you're you're not. You're a single ship out there adrift. There's reach out and understanding that people need to reach out is again why I say who needs that?
True. It's very
You
true.
know, and I'm a firm believer in and like I say hello to everybody, but if somebody looks particularly nice or you really like her, just telling them that positive reinforcement for whatever can or that week or possibly that month. And it costs you nothing. Looking for the good, play the glad game. Find the good in people, but share it with them. because some and someone pointing it out to us could be the trigger to allow us to breathe.
I totally agree. I definitely agree. I'm gonna have to start doing that. I used to talk to people all the time. Like I was very walk up to people and be like, "Hey, how are you?" But then I'm not okay with it. Like, yeah, like they were just not okay with it. I was like, "Good morning," and they'd be like, "F you," and I'd be like, "Oh, like
Say
okay."
thank you. Yeah, I know I get some very weird looks in New York when when I'm sunny. Years ago, my grandmother and my aunt was fed up with the winter. We up here in Canada, I live in ludicrous amount of snow over every winter, and my aunt had had enough. It was the end of March, and she phoned me, figure out somewhere for us to go. It's horrible. It's horrible. I can't handle the snow anymore. And my grandmother's in the background saying, I want, okay, I'll arrange it. I'll set it all up. And at the time, there was a company called Freddie Laker who had one way. And I think it was $15 for a meal. So we flew from Ottawa, the other terminal to get their tickets. And we had the whole day. So I took them through New York. My grandma, she wanted to see St. Patrick's Cathedral and shop on Fifth Avenue. And I took them to Rockefeller Plaza. And we did just before we left. So I was slogging along behind them with all the boots and coats and scarves. And it was lots of fun.
Uh,
On the way back to the airport, I thought, okay, so we'll get off in Queens. There's an airport or bus. It's all good. That's what we did. But we had done some shopping. We had bags with things we'd bought as well. My grandmother bought something for my mom and, that kind of stuff. And my aunt, my aunt had a heart condition. So she was always one we had to watch out for. We're coming into the okay, get off. I just want to make sure everybody's okay. And as I turn around, the door's shut, and the face of my little grandmother is in the middle of all the people on the subway. And the car goes, it's heading for Coney Island. And I'm thinking, oh my God, my mother is going to kill me. I have lost my grandmother in New York City. This is not good. So I took my aunt and I sat her on the stairs. And I said, don't you dare die. Don't you dare have a heart attack. You just sit there. I'll be back. I got on the next subway and went to the next station. Found myself a subway police guy, whatever, security person, and told him what had happened. And he was like, well, uh, let's go back to your aunt and we'll see what we can do. And by then I'm thinking, oh my God, like I'm going to have to leave the country because my mom's going to kill me. There's like, oh, I can't imagine my grandmother being stuck on Coney Island by herself. And she's very Scottish. And anyway, when I got back to my aunt, the security guard's in front of me, so I can't really see. I just see kind of half of her. And there are about 30 people around the staircase. And I'm thinking, oh my God, my aunt, she's gone and done it. She's had another heart attack. Like, oh, now I'm really in trouble. And the guy goes, but who's that little woman? And out from the legs of three big guys in Queens, my grandmother's waving. It's like, oh my God. This group of people, they saw what happened and they immediately said to my grandmother, it's okay, we'll take you back. Okay, there were 8 of them. I guess they lived in Queens somewhere. These were all people of color, people we didn't know, okay, in New York City. And they're there with my grandmother, who's yakking away with, because my grandmother talked to everybody just like me. And she said to one of the guys, well, can I at least take you for a drink? Let's go have a wee drink. And he said, ma'am, that is not a good idea. Not here in Queens. We're just going to make sure you get on the bus for the airport. And my grandmother gave them $20, which this is like 1979. And the guy's like, oh my God. If I had more, I would give it to you because you have saved my life. And they were so nice. They walked us out. They took us to get the airport bus. It was so wonderful. So I have nothing but good things to say about New York City and the people in it.
I'm originally from there. I give them crap, but some of them are some good people. Some of them are some very good people.
I think you get back what you put out.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. And oh, so it's about that time. So thank you for being on the show. And I think that was a wonderful note to end on. But before we go, uh, let's see what question you have. Well, I want you to email me the question you have for
Okay.
the next guest. And that way we can leave it as a surprise for the next
I
episode.
love it. Yeah.
And also, I want to remind my viewers that we are doing a giveaway of a copy of Carl Jung's book, The Red Book. So, make sure you
Yeah.
subscribe, comment, and at the end of December, we're going to pick a winner. So that should be fun.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And may I say to you and your audience, make the very best of your today every day.
Thank you. And I like to end every episode with thank you for today, thank you for yesterday, and thank you for tomorrow. Always remember to question your reality. And at every end, there is a beginning. You guys take care and have a wonderful day.